Hey guys, my name's Dale, and you're watching Think Fact. Your body is one of a kind. You are the only person who has ever existed in it, and you're the only person who manually controls it, and hopefully ever will. Well, hopefully. But even with that, do you own your body? Do you own yourself? Well, let's investigate. First things first, I feel it's important to make a basis on how I'm going to actually tackle this question. The approach I'm going to take is one that involves how humans have viewed ownership in terms of the legality and the definition. And of course, there's a whole other construct around this that involves religion, which is pretty straight to the point. And even if you do believe in a god or gods control every aspect there is about humanity and just everything in existence, that still does not distract from the point that we as humans have devised our own freedoms and restraints on Earth itself, and that's what this video is going to tackle. So to get things started, let's define what ownership is. Ownership is the act, the state, or the right of possessing something. And well, that's actually quite a bit to work with. So I've broken up each one of these concepts to give you guys a better understanding about what they encompass. So this video is going to talk about just that. The act of possessing something, the state of possessing something, and the right of possessing something. Which pretty much is things I felt were important and allow me to make a video in a responsible amount of time. So let's start off with the act of ownership over you. Now the act of possession over something, when compared to the other two groups, is a bit different, being that it is decision-making and ownership over things that you are willingly participating in. Perhaps what is the best example of this is a career, but you could also consider the recommendations that doctors make you, and when people make decisions for you that you plan on fulfilling, being a part of this as well. Now time to break this down. When you try to understand what a career actually is, it's you participating in a job that requires you to do certain tasks. Of course, you could decide not to do these tasks and potentially face being fired. Or you can decide to do what the job demands and actually have the capability of keeping it, which I'm sure most professionals would advise. I mean, I'm a professional, so I would advise that. It might not necessarily be what you want to do, but it's kind of what you have to do. That's when you let the rules dictate your actions. Not because it's the wrong thing, but because you value your position and you don't want to lose it, and that's going to influence the actions you want to make. Similar if you follow through to requests that people make for you. Like if a doctor tells you to do something and you actually commit yourself to it. Or maybe even committing yourself to something that you promised someone. It might not necessarily be the thing you want to do, but you understand the consequences of not fulfilling those. And they can have strong impacts on the decisions you do make over what you want to make. So this group would actually be a group that makes you do things because you understand the benefits of doing it. And you understand the drawbacks of not complying. But it's still pretty optional, unlike the other two. And that, my friends, is a segue. Next up, we have the state of ownership over you. Now this group is interesting because it can be both legal and illegal. But unlike the first one, you don't really have a choice. This group involves things like parenting and slavery. Kind of funny how both of those are in the same group. This also includes things like jail time and people making decisions for you while you're away or unconscious. And the list can go on. Now, of course, if you're at a point in your life where you still need your parents' permission in order to do things, you don't truly have true ownership over yourself entirely. So that one's a given and includes 50% of my audience. Slavery is another one which you're probably most likely not in, I'm guessing. But even in the 21st century, there is an estimated 21 million slaves. That's almost like the entire population of the country Australia. And some estimates have it all the way up to 29 million at that. Now, jail time is an interesting one, surprisingly enough. This is when the rules of society decide that your actions are unjust, allowing society to be the group that takes away your rights and is in a state of control over you. But the last one, which is also a very interesting one, is when people have the inability to make decisions for themselves and it requires other people to do it for them. Obviously, if you're unconscious in a scenario that could potentially be dangerous, people are probably going to make decisions for you whether you like it or not. This is most often seen by medical professionals, but you can also find situations where people are simply unavailable and it's required that someone else make a decision for you that you might be obligated to in the future. And another important thing to think about is what's going to happen to you when you go to retirement and maybe even get really old and you need care. And then what about when you die? So in this case, it's very important to have a will, or someone is going to have to be stuck with dealing with all of that. And it might not be a person you want stuck with it. All interesting things to think about. And lastly, we have the right of ownership over yourself. This is when specific laws dictate what you have the capability to do, and could potentially allow control over you, whether you like it or not. Ranging from things like the draft, paying taxes, being required to wear specific clothes in public, as well as marriage and rules on how you're allowed to drive, and many other things. These are things you are technically not allowed to disobey, which is obviously going to influence your actions to some extent. If there is a draft, you are required, if you are capable, to be a part of it. By law. Paying your taxes is required. You could not do it, but there's some trouble coming your way if you don't. Unless you're super rich sometimes. And there's regions in the United States and all around the world that require specific clothes to be on you, depending maybe on your gender or whatever reason. In terms of marriage, what you're doing is you're pretty much giving up 50% of yourself to that person and allowing that person to make almost any decision they want for you. And this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of laws and pretty much everything else I've talked about. Now I do want to point out that this video is not one of those videos that are like, the man's got a grasp on you, man. No, no, no hippies. What I really just want you to do is just to think critically about what motivates you to do what you do. What is the true motivation? And what might you have to abide by? And it's very common for people to believe in cases like this that freedom is not so much a right, but a privilege. What do you think? It's very easy for many of us to believe that we have complete liberty to do whatever we want with our life, but to do that, there's a lot of consequences. It's common for people to not do what they want to do, but instead do what they feel they have to do in order to meet the expectations. I can't say it's always a bad thing though, it's just modern society. And if you don't want to deal with the consequences, sometimes you just need to go along with the rules that society has made and the ones you have to make. So I guess it all boils down to the question I have for you guys. Who actually owns you? And please let me know your thoughts and feelings on this in the comments. With all that said and done, my name's Dale, this is Think Fact, and remember, never stop learning. Thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed my videos, please stay tuned for more. More videos on the facts that almost everybody missed. The British actually had a divide between what would become association football and